The ongoing imprisonment of Jimmy Lai. He is a man who was captured by the Chinese Communist Party, is currently in prison, and has been in prison since the coronavirus pandemic back in 2020. We're going to bring in Congressman Chris Smith from the great state of New Jersey. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. How are you, sir?
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you for bringing further attention to this terrible human rights abuse of Jimmy Lai. He's a great man, and he's got to be released.
Right. So you authored a letter and led a letter along with with Senator Rick Scott of Florida. You had, I believe, 2/3 of the Senate signed on to this. You're encouraging the Trump administration to try to bring up Jimmy Lai and pretty much advocate for his release when he meets with President Xi this upcoming week, correct?
Right. In my opinion, there's no doubt that President Trump will bring up Jimmy Lai. What we're trying to do with the letter, as well as with the resolution that I will have on the floor on Tuesday, is to say there is solidarity. It's bipartisan in the House and the Senate, backing the president's request to release Jimmy Lai on humanitarian grounds. He is very sick. He's 78 years old. He didn't do anything wrong, and that's we leave that aside for a moment. He's called for democracy, human rights, respect, the rule of law, and for that he's been punished with a 20-year sentence in prison in Hong Kong. So the hope is that Xi Jinping will realize that it's not just the president making that request. That should be enough in and of itself. But the entire House and Senate stand in solidarity with the president in making that humanitarian parole request.
And what kind of conversations have you had with the family? We understand that this man's health is not very good right now. He's over the age of 70. The conditions he's been living in have not been good whatsoever. What kind of updates have you been able to get, if any?
Well, we get that he's struggling. He is in solitary confinement, in part because he has been so sick. Diabetes is just one of the maladies that he's suffering from. He is 78, and a 20-year prison sentence means life imprisonment. Now, back in 2023, I had a tremendous hearing with his son, Sebastian. Sebastian is a chip off the old block. He's very articulate, very, he's got it all together, and he's asking for his dad's release, and ditto for Jimmy Lai's daughter, Claire, who many of us on Capitol Hill have met, come to admire, just like Jimmy Lai's son, Sebastian. Just two wonderful kids, now they're grown-ups, of course, who love their dad, believe in peace and reconciliation and human rights, and want their dad free. They want him to get medical attention. The Chinese Communist Party has a despicable record, frankly, of dealing with political prisoners and religious prisoners. Even Liu Xiaobo, who won the Nobel Peace Prize, and I'm the one who led the effort in the House and Senate to get that Peace Prize. Others, Václav Havel, joined that as well. And he died horribly of cancer. That, Xi Jinping should realize that brings dishonor to the Chinese Communist Party. Yes, they have human rights abuses that are legion, many, but here's an opportunity to just reach out to President Trump and say, Jimmy Lai is getting out of prison, and we're going to let him come and get the kind of humanitarian and healthcare need that he helps. And again, his two kids have been tenacious, and just, you could see the love in their eyes when they talk. Claire, I've been with her many times as well. She was at the State of the Union when President Trump gave his, very powerful speech that day. And he was sitting in what would have been my wife's seat. She said, Marie said, that's Claire's seat. She's got to be there. And I'm so glad she was. And she met so many members, House and Senate, who knew her immediately, respect her. And so Jimmy Lai's got to be free.
And the president has worked on prisoner releases and prisoner swaps with the CCP before. I think a lot of people remember members of the Ball family being released from President Xi back during the first term. But this might be a little bit of a different story, considering the fact that this is a man who was an activist, a pro-human rights activist in China, pro-freedom of speech, was involved in some of the Hong Kong protests that were going on back in 2020. It seems like this might be a bigger challenge, but do you have confidence that it can get done, that Jimmy Lai's freedom is a possibility this week?
It's a great question. We have to leave. And President Trump, no one does it better than he does. He has gotten hundreds of prisoners out of Belarus, where Lukashenko, and I wrote the Belarus Democracy Act 2004, I believe passionately in human rights for people everywhere. He got hundreds of prisoners out of Lukashenko's gulags. No one does it better. No one. Reagan was great. He got a lot of people out of prison. Trump is doing even better. So I think when it comes to Xi Jinping, there needs to be some bridges that are built. And this would be, a modest but very important step forward if Xi Jinping would just let this great man go. And when he was advocating for democracy and human rights in Hong Kong, he always did it with nonviolence. He used the power of the pen. He ran Apple News, as everybody knows, and he did it with such precision, accuracy and non-violence. And yet he's dealing with, an imprisonment that is a life imprisonment for his non-violence. It's in Xi Jinping's interests to respond to the president's call. And he has asked repeatedly, even as a candidate again, President Trump was talking about how he would raise the issue of Jimmy Lai. It's an uphill battle, no doubt about it. But I know he'll leave no stone unturned.